If you are still wondering if The Matrix Resurrections is worth watching, go watch it and decide for yourself. After you've watched it, continue watching this video. I'm going to go into major spoilers, plot, character, and just overall opinion of the entire film. I've watched it twice now. Haven't paid for either one of it. Either time that I watched it. I suggest that if you have HBO Max, or if you have a friend who has HBO Max, get the code from them so you can watch it for free. I wouldn't suggest watching this in the theater. There are some people that will tell you, these are shills, and they will tell you to watch it in the movie theater because that's where it was, that's what the action was made for. These people are shills. They want you to spend your hard-earned money. They've been paid off as well. I am telling you the truth. Watch it on HBO Max from a friend who has the code. That way you don't have to pay for it. So starting from the beginning, I had high hopes for this movie. I enjoyed the very first Matrix, and the second and the third were not so great, but I still enjoyed certain aspects of each sequel. I felt like they said everything they needed to say in the first one. It was interesting, it was thought-provoking, and it opened up a lot of conversation and consciousness, I think. I saw the movie in the theater, the first movie in the theater, and I just remember it being just an amazing experience. The visuals, the action, the characters, just the overall movie hit me in a way that it will always be timeless, and I can always go back and watch it and enjoy it. And yeah, the first Matrix holds a very, very special place in my heart, and it's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. Now, with Matrix 4, Matrix Resurrections, I will say that they took the approach of a soft reboot with a little bit of a twist with characters and a lot of beat-for-beat action of the first movie, with a little bit of characters from the second movies and some plot points from the third movie to just kind of sprinkle it in. Just starting from the beginning, everything starts out very, very familiar. We start off with Trinity. This isn't Carrie-Anne Moss. This is actually Christina Ricci, who is playing as Trinity, and she is surrounded by a bunch of SWAT officers, and they end up transforming to agents, and she does her kick-ass scene, just like we're used to seeing, and it plays out just like the first movie. She escapes the room, she makes it to the rooftop, she's running along the rooftop, they're chasing her, and as she's doing this, one of the newer characters come in, and it's a blue-haired Asian lady. I think her name is Bugs. She is viewing Trinity from the shadows, watching her, and she's just understanding that this is a loop in the modal, actually, that's what it's called. It's one of those observations that she is saying that things are a little bit different this time around. Trinity is pinned down, captured by the agents. After Bugs realizes that things are changed, things are different, that it's a trap, the possibility of it being a trap, that's when an agent shows up and starts chasing her. She ends up coming face to face with Trinity. She tries her best to get out. She jumps off a building. It's slow-mo action. She ends up jumping off the building, I guess, into a... they don't have to chase down phones anymore. They can just go into doorways, portals, and stuff like that. But I'm jumping ahead. Before we go back into the plot, let's just address the elephant in the room. There are two major pieces of the components of this movie that are not present. And the first one is Morpheus. And when I mean Morpheus, I mean Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne to me will always be the Morpheus, the one that embodied his character completely. He will always be the embodiment of Morpheus, and not to take away the performance of the man who played Morpheus, the younger, new, and improved. I don't even know if you can call him improved Morpheus. I guess you could say he was a little bit more more swaggish, I guess. He had a little bit of a lighter attitude, but he starts off as an agent in the very beginning, and he is the one who chases down Bugs and goes into a room and finds out that it was Neo that woke up Bugs, and then I guess in that moment he had a conversation with Bugs, and Bugs basically opened his mind and gave him a choice: red pill or the blue pill. And I don't know, it was a very awkward scene from my first and second viewing. She just said a lot of jargon really, really fast, and even on the second time watching it, it still didn't really make that much sense to me. Maybe you guys probably caught on to it, but I'm a simple man who likes simple action movies, and you know, it was a little fast for me. As far as the conversation, he joins Bugs, Morpheus he joins her, and then they jump out together. They escape the agents, and they leave the Matrix together. Then we meet up with Neo. Well, actually, so let's go back to the other elephant in the room, the other missing piece of this puzzle. It's Agent Smith. Agent Smith, played by Hugo Weaving. He's not in this at all. They actually have a lot of callbacks. This movie gets very, very meta, and a lot of callbacks to the first movie and scenes with Hugo Weaving and Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne even has a statue in the movie at one point, and I'm just, from what I get from watching it, is I feel like, I mean, I know some of this stuff isn't true. There was a lot of I did some research as far as Hugo Weaving had some scheduling issues, so he couldn't shoot the movie. But hey, guys, I got a little secret to tell you. This movie has I don't know how long it's been in production, but it's been 20 years since the last Matrix movie. You think that if Hugo Weaving doesn't have time for you right now, that you would wait. You would wait and to get him in there. But from what I understand, Warner Brothers was going to do this movie with or without Lena Wachowski. So she and the other writers, they wanted to do it. They're like, we got to do it. If they are going to make this movie, they need to be the ones to do it. And it's unfortunate, they didn't have the time to wait for Hugo to be available to shoot the movie, and I feel like that's a huge detriment. I mean, Hugo Weaving was the other half to Neo, to Keanu Reeves' character, and I felt like he brought just as much to the role as Neo did. So two big characters missing out of this, but they've been replaced. Moving on, let's see. We have Nairobi. She's back. Jada Pinkett Smith. I have no idea why they brought her back. I guess she was available, but it wasn't. I don't really feel like they could have made the movie without her, and it would have been fine. I felt like, I mean, I played the game with her and the Asian guy. I forget, what was it called? Was it called The Matrix. Oh gosh. You know what? I'm gonna have to go on my computer and figure out what was that game that had Nairobi in it. The Matrix. I think it's like, was it Matrix game? It wasn't Matrix Online. It was let's see. All of the Matrix games, they were, gosh. What was it called? What was it called? Not Matrix Online. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we had, I know we had Path of Neo. That was the better one out of the Matrix games, in my opinion. Let's see. You had, where is it called? Okay, so you had the Matrix Online. You would Enter the Matrix. That's the one that had Jada Pinkett Smith in it. And there was also an Asian gentleman that was her assistant. And yeah, basically Enter the Matrix. That was the story that connected to the final flight of the Osiris. It was part of the whole Animatrix thing. If you guys haven't seen that, that's an anime of the Matrix that also had some animated shorts as well with it. It was pretty awesome. I owned the box set at one point, and yeah, great set of films. But so yeah, Nairobi's back. She's aged. She's been aged digitally, and yeah, it's wild. It's crazy when you look at the characters that they brought back versus Keanu Reeves, who doesn't even look like he's aged a day. Like, he just grew more facial hair. But I feel like, well, that's another issue that I would like to address. Um, Speaking of facial hair, they brought back the Merovingian, and not in the way that you would think. He had a big role in Matrix Reloaded, and yeah, he was kind of like on top of things when he was in that movie, and had a lot of control. And now he kind of came back as a hobo, just a crazy screaming hobo, and it just kind of feels bad that they stripped him down like that. And he was very kind of a background character. Very sad to see. He was one of my favorite characters, one of them, in Matrix 2. So, moving on, this is the new Morpheus. He is what is his name? It's like Yaya something, and I'm not trying to do my Doctor Disrespect impression. His name is Yaya what? Yahya Abdul Mateen II. That's his name. So, I mean, I'm not gonna say he was horrible. I mean, he definitely was athletic. He tried. He tried, and I'll give him props for that. But I don't think anybody can ever be Lawrence Fishburne. Nobody can ever top that. And it kind of seemed like he was mocking Lawrence Fishburne's performance in some ways when they were when he had met Neo the second time, and he was trying to give him this pill. It's actually in the scene that's on screen right now. He was trying to get Neo to, I guess, easily settle in. So they had the scene playing from the first Matrix, which was, I guess, in universe, was the game that Neo had created. And yeah, Lawrence Fishburne was on screen, and it was just so much better. Whereas, the first time you meet this new Morpheus, it's in a toilet. So, I mean, he'll forever be known as the shitty Morpheus, because he wasn't at the stand-up urinal. He came out of the stall, so he'll always be known to me as the shitty Morpheus, the shitty one. It's only fitting that you meet him in a bathroom. So, honestly, I feel like, I don't know why. I mean, from the research that I did, they didn't contact Lawrence Fishburne. They honestly just went on without him, and I don't know why. I mean, I know Lawrence Fishburne isn't as young as he used to be, but I mean, they have de-aging technology. His voice is still the same. I know that he can pull out Morpheus at the drop of a dime. I know he can. That's his iconic role, and I mean, Lawrence Fishburne's been in a bunch of movies, a lot of great movies, but I feel like Morpheus is the top pinnacle for his career. But so, but as for Mr. Yahya Abdul Mateen II, if I were to give him like a rating out of 10, uh, maybe like a I gotta deduct points for not being as serious as Lawrence Fishburne. So, but as far as athleticism, that was fine. But even the choreography in this wasn't like it used to be. I feel like there were a lot of quick cuts. It was almost like a Bourne Identity type action where it was very quick, very shaky, and whereas the first Matrix, the fight choreography, you had the Hong Kong like group that was working with the fight choreographers and stuff. So everything was very well planned out, and it just wasn't present here. I feel like everything was just very, very, very jumpy and a lot of editing. So, but I guess I would give him maybe like a 4 or 5. So, sorry, man. Moving on. This is the new Agent Smith. This is actually in universe. This will be Thomas Anderson's boss, partner at the. Oh, that's one thing. Yeah. So Thomas Anderson, Neo, is now a video game producer, and this is his boss. He is. His name isn't Agent Smith, but that's what he's credited as, and yeah, he just I don't know. I mean, from the first time you meet him, he's spouting that line, looking out the window, the same line that Hugo Weaving said in the first Matrix. And I'm not going to say what it is because right now it's completely evaded me. But I mean, they even went ahead and showed the scene from the first Matrix as he was saying that line, and they do this a lot. I mean, I understand that the first Matrix was an amazing film, but I feel like this movie, it can't stand without that movie. Like, you had to have seen that movie in order to really kind of get through this one, because they don't really hold your hand too much. They show a lot of flashbacks, and I can't imagine a person who is watching Matrix Resurrections and this is your first Matrix movie, you would have any idea what's going on, because not only are they showing all of these scenes from past movies, I can't really see how you would have any frame of reference seeing this stuff. Maybe you could, but I can just imagine people just being lost in this if this is their first time. But as far as a person who has watched all of the Matrix movies and all of the content from Matrix and played all the games, I didn't appreciate all of the callbacks to the first one. I mean, I feel like if you're going to make a Matrix movie and it's going to take, I'm not going to say it took 20 years because it didn't take 20 years, but if you're going to take that much time in between, I feel like there should have been a lot more thought put into it, and not just a retread of the first movie. I feel like you need to stand on your own. I mean, I understand. It's crazy because in the movie, they view the first movie as a video game. That's what the Matrix makes it into. They make it that Neo created the first Matrix as a game, and everything that happened in the trilogy of movies were made into games. And now they are working on a production of Matrix 4. And it's something that they were kind of forced into because in universe, Warner Brothers is the one in charge of the studio at the very top trying to distribute Matrix 4. And they're like, look, we're going to put the game out with or without you. And Keanu Reeves, he has a real moment just saying, really, they can do that without us? And they're like, that's why we have to do it. And I feel like that's the conversation, that Lana Wachowski had with her writers, and they didn't want to be George Lucas sitting by watching these sequels come out and just watching everything go down in flames. They wanted to at least be a part of it. So again, I don't know if I can give them, I can give them credit for trying, at least they tried, but oh boy, a lot of problems. So moving on, you got some new characters. This is Bugs. This would be the character, in my opinion, who is kind of the spiritual successor to, what's her name? Gosh, I've already forgot her name. You got Neo and Trinity. So Trinity, I feel like she's the spiritual successor to Trinity. And it's I don't know how I feel about her because there are some points where she does some really good action, but at the same time, the way that she delivers her lines, it's so quick, fast, and so matter of fact that it flies over your head. At least in the very early parts, and then later the movie does a thing where they have to transfer her. They need her basically to transfer um, Trinity out of the Matrix and into the real world, and because of her brain pattern or something like that. I don't know. Once again, I'm a very simple man trying to understand this stuff, and what I can say is uh, she was she was badass in some scenes, but forgettable. I mean, I think if she didn't have blue hair, she would. That's one thing that she wouldn't stick out. I mean, but no, she's. I actually recognize this actress. Those of you who don't know, she was one of the Sand Snakes in Game of Thrones, and also she was the Asian pilot in the new Star Wars movie. So yeah, it's. I want to say, what was it? Was it Last Jedi, or was it? It was either Last Jedi or it was the last one. Yeah, the Rise of Skywalker. I believe she was one of the X-wing pilots, and I think originally this actress, she tried for the role that Daisy Ridley ended up getting, but she ended up becoming an X-wing pilot. So, but yeah, that's a little fun fact about her. So next we have Neil Patrick Harris playing the Analyst. He's a spiritual successor to the Architect, and I will say, I guess he did a. I guess you could say he was fine, but I couldn't really take him seriously in the beginning. I will always remember Neil Patrick Harris from when he had his time in How I Met Your Mother, and also that movie Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and the sequel to that one. That was also I believe, doing cocaine off of a stripper and just getting shot by a shotgun, and just I don't know. He's just a very goofy character. So I mean, when I see him in this role as Neo's therapist, it's kind of doing two things. And for me, I can't take him seriously. And then when the action does happen, and you can see how desperately he is trying to keep Neo in the Matrix by making sure that his prescription is filled and try to convince him that he's making progress as far as his therapy. And there's a point in the movie where Neo puts his finger in the mirror, like the first movie, and he actually sees the Analyst on the other side of the mirror. And the Analyst desperately tries to convince Neo that this is real. He says, this is not real. And then he tries to pull him through the mirror, which is just like, okay, I'm sorry, but you're trying to convince me that this is not real, and yet you're doing something that is unreal. That kind of, yeah, that hit me right away when I saw that. But then at the end, he gets his comeuppance with Trinity, and we'll get to that later. But yeah, so I feel like, was he better than the Architect? Absolutely not. The Architect had so much. I felt like he had so much power and so much strength in just his calm demeanor, and he almost kind of reminded me of Tywin Lannister, the way that he was just so strong and convincing, and just with his conviction. He just held so much of a presence, whereas I didn't feel that with Neil Patrick Harris. There's a point in the movie where Neo's team of video game designers, they're trying to figure out, why was the first Matrix so good, and what do people think of when you talk about the Matrix? And people were like, guns, more guns, and the common stuff. They were talking about the psychological stuff that makes you think, and gives you the what the fuck kind of idea in your head. And then one guy comes to the conclusion, bullet time. He says one word, bullet time. They're like, that's 2 words. That's probably the one and only time I probably laughed in the movie, but it was a forced laugh, I'll tell you. Didn't laugh on the second time. But I will say that um, the the use of bullet time, they had Neil Patrick Harris. He actually uses bullet time to slow everything down, and he's walking around in normal, and Neo's trying to punch him out, and he's just walking around his fist, still talking to him in real time, and I don't know. I just feel like the effects were very different. They were very, even though our technology has advanced, especially in 20 years, it just didn't. It wasn't. I don't. I guess it just wasn't as creative as the first one. It just didn't feel as creative. It felt kind of cheap. And I know I'm not the only one thinking about this. I saw a couple people reviewing this when it first dropped. But moving on, the chemistry between Neo and Trinity. I will say that probably is one positive in this movie. You definitely felt it. You definitely felt that they had a past, but they were reconnecting in the movie for the first time after so much time passing, and it's kind of one thing that kind of stuck out to me is when they go to the coffee shop, the Simulate. They the Neo, well, I keep saying Neo, but basically Thomas Anderson and his video game buddy, producer buddy, they're sitting there, and Carrie Ann Moss, Trinity, walks in with her couple of kids, and the video game buddy is like, "Whoa, God, look at that MILF," and all that stuff. And it kind of was like, well, I mean, okay, Carrie Ann Moss is a very attractive woman. I will say in this movie, the way she carries herself in the Matrix is kind of reserved. Like she's not. I wouldn't say that she's sexualized at all. She's literally dressed, covering up everything. I mean, if you were to just look at her face, sure, she's very attractive. But it's not like wow, she's hot. You know, the way that the video game guy was, I mean, it was just he. I feel like he kind of overplayed it a little bit, and but I don't know. I feel like they could have had some different dialogue instead of what he said. Yeah, so I will say the chemistry in this movie between the two of them has probably been the strongest. Did always think in the first Matrix movie and subsequent movies, their chemistry wasn't really there. I didn't really feel it, but even though they were probably the closest in those movies, but I feel like in this one you can actually feel that the time has passed, but it's something that they're trying to reconnect. But it's like they're meeting each other for the first time, and it's very interesting. And definitely by the end, they kind of did a little bit of twist. Instead of Trinity finding Neo and pulling him out of the Matrix, Neo finds Trinity and he does the best he can to pull her out of the Matrix. One thing that they flipped on this is that instead of Neo being the one, it made Trinity also be the one. So, yeah, she flies now. That's that's another thing. There's a scene where they're about to step off of a building, and Neo is just like, "You have to believe," and they jump off, and it's in slow motion, and you see Neo, he's falling, dangling, and she's not. She's actually, gliding a little bit. She's just staying actually in the air, and it's kind of like, ugh, I get what you're doing, but at the same time, this is not what I want to see. I get it. You want to. It's almost like the roles have reversed now. But Neo can fly. Okay, he tried to commit suicide earlier in the movie, and let's see if I can get to it. This scene right here. He tried to commit suicide earlier, and Bugs was actually here. She's actually on that balcony right below him, looking up at him, and she said in the movie that when he stepped off, he didn't fall. So that had to be an amazing sight to see. And but for some reason, in the scene when he's stepping off the building with Trinity, it just, I don't know. He was just, they made him into a pussy, and it sucks because why do they do this? Why does Hollywood do this with all of our main characters from badass movies? I mean, I get it. You want to switch things up, and But you did this with Han Solo. You did this with Luke Skywalker. Um, you just, and now you're doing this with Neo. It's like, I really, I worry about any future movies that they're going to remake that they haven't remade yet, that they're just going to make it crappier. And there's certain movies that I don't want to be remade, and I will go ahead and tell you right now, at the top of that list, some of you guys don't know this one, maybe some of you do. The Warriors, one of my favorite movies. Just a dumb action movie with a lot of running and a lot of fighting. It's a pretty simple concept. I don't want them to remake it, but I know eventually they will. And when they do, it's going to be so different and it's going to suck. So maybe they'll just focus on the all-girl gang and just follow them. And I mean, what was it? Okay, so let's go back. They've done Star Wars, where they changed it up from Luke Skywalker to Rey. They changed the Ghostbusters from, an all-guy cast to an all-girl cast. I mean, Trinity was one of those action females that was awesome and wasn't awesome because of, like, feminist agenda. Like, I feel like you can put Trinity from the first Matrix in the second and third. You can put her in the same rankings of Sigourney Weaver in Alien. You can put her with Uma Thurman in Kill Bill. Just badass females, but not badass in a way that they need to save men. Like, I'm not like a sexist. Don't get me wrong. I actually really appreciate what they did in this movie. But at the same time, I know that Hollywood has an agenda, and it's a feminist agenda. It's this thing where they take things and switch it around, and it's a lot of basically making men weak and making women the saviors, and there's a lot to it, and I want them to just make new stuff. I don't want them to retread and remix things, because there are some things that are not broken. The first Matrix was not broken. It was an absolute masterpiece. And they butcherized it. They bastardized it in this movie. Bastardized it. And that's truly how I feel. There's a line in the movie that Bugs says to Neo. I think this is when I think it was one of the times when they had first brought him out. And I don't know the exact wording to it, but she's telling Neo that they took your story and they made it to where it isn't it doesn't make it doesn't what's the word? You know what? I have my phone, and I'll play the audio. Let's see if I can find the audio for you, because it was definitely something. Let me find it. They took your story, something that meant so much to me, and they turned it into something trivial. That's exactly how I feel about this movie. I feel like they took the IP that we all loved, that we all enjoyed, that we held in very high regard, and I feel like they just threw it in the blender. And then after they finished blending everything up, they threw it in the garbage. I don't feel like they're going to make another movie. If they do, it's not going to... they shouldn't. I don't know if they will. I hope they don't. Going back, Keanu Reeves. Some people will say that he was sleeping through this role. He was acting very nonchalant, and what's the word? He was just very confused, I felt like, in the movie, where, I mean, okay, look. At one point in the movie, he has a shaved head, and he's completely shaven on the face. Why does he look like John Wick? That's my problem. It's like, maybe that was definitely a decision that they made, but come on now, he looks way too much like John Wick. I feel like he just stepped off a set and onto this one. Would it have killed him to cut his hair, shave the beard, because he shaved his entire head anyway. They shaved his head and they shaved his beard for when he pops up out of the pod So why couldn't they have just cut his hair and make him look more like Thomas Anderson? That part I don't I feel like that was a misstep. The fact that he shaved his hair off anyway, that was something that maybe that doesn't bother some people, but it definitely bothered me. But yeah, so that was one big thing. He just didn't feel like Thomas Anderson. He felt like John Wick. But yeah, as far as the red blue pill imagery, there was a lot of red and blue dichotomy in this one. I remember in the scene where the the shitty Morpheus is wearing red underneath his jacket, and standing next to him was Bugs with the blue hair, and it was kind of like they weren't doing like opposite convincing and stuff like that, but they were kind of opposites in terms of the way they handle and way they speak to Neo. There was part where, you know, Morpheus had suggested that Neo maybe had been working with the machines the entire time, and Bugs quickly objected to that and said, like that's not the case. Um, but so moving on, they did this imagery with Neo, and they also did it with Trinity as well in the coffee shop. The reflections of the older view of what everybody saw Neo as. He was very old, and they did it very briefly with Trinity on the tabletop when she was meeting with Neo for the cappuccino that they had, and I don't understand why they did that. I mean, they explained it in the movie, but I don't feel like they needed to do it. It had been 60 years, so I guess the reality of it was that everybody had to view Neo as an older person. But by that logic, does that mean that Trinity, or what's her name, Tiffany in the Matrix, Tiffany was old to everybody else because she was a MILF to that one nerd guy? So I don't know. I don't know what to think, because I think the Matrix made her look the way she did, the way we saw her, and then in the reflection they did this thing where she looked old. It was very confusing to me, and maybe you guys can explain to me in the comments. Again, I'm a simple man, and I just don't understand why they did that. I don't feel like it was needed. But so, wrapping things up, is this movie worth seeing? If you're a fan of the series, I think it's kind of one of the things you got to do. You got to see it, that way you can have an opinion about it. But are you missing anything? No, you're not. It's basically a retread of the first movie, and just with the characters switched around, but you gotta knock off Morpheus. You got a somewhat diluted Agent Smith. He's nothing like the original. And you got a role reversal of Neo is trying to save Trinity to pull her out of the Matrix now, whereas Trinity, she has, in the Matrix, she has, I think it's like 2 to 3 kids, whatever, and then she has a husband named Chad, which, he's a Chad, huh? Get that one. But I feel like with Trinity at the very end being able to fly, and then at the end, both of them are flying. They meet up with Neil Patrick Harris, and basically Trinity has God mode powers where she can basically slice people's necks with a strike. She can punch people's jaws off, and then with a snap of the finger, she can bring it right back. So she was in full control at the end of the movie, and I guess the ending meant that they were going to go and, I don't know, have whatever life they wanted. She ended up leaving her Chad husband and the kids because it was all fake anyway, which I don't know what you do. Do you just erase all those memories, or you just let them go? I don't know how a person, I mean, she was talking about how she couldn't even do therapy because kids are so draining, but now she just was so easy to let all that go. It was just, I don't know, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. She actually struck Neil Patrick Harris because she was like, "And you guys use kids and da 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 da." But yeah, so what did you guys think of the movie? Did you like the movie? Did you have problems with the movie? Please let me know down in the comments below. If you guys like this content or you are finding it for the first time, make sure you like the video and click down the subscribe button and leave me a comment. Tell me what you thought about the movie. If you saw it in the movie theaters or if you saw it on HBO Max on a friend's code or if you have HBO Max on your own. Do I think you should buy it? I'm not buy it. Do I think you should watch it or pay to watch it? Absolutely not. But if you have HBO Max, you're not losing anything if you can watch it for free. And yeah, it's definitely not, to me, it's definitely not worth paying for. I won't be buying this movie. It's, I feel like kind of like how I felt at the end of The Last Jedi, you know, like not this movie made me not care anymore. It was kind of like the movie was so meta and so self-aware about itself, it made it to where they were like, okay, the Matrix basically re-put Neo and Trinity back into the Matrix because they have a lot of power when they're together, but they wanted to control that. So they had to keep them connected, and the machines rebuilt Neo, and they, because I believe Neo and Trinity died. They died at the end of the Matrix Revolutions, and yeah, so they brought them back to life, but they kept them plugged in and all this stuff. And because them together, they're like the dyad, the Kylo Ren and what's her Rey. Which I was just like, oh, they're doing the same dyad thing from Star Wars, but I don't know, man. Lana Wachowski. The only thing I tell you is that the first movie that you made, it had balls. It had 2 sets of balls. Don't cancel me, all right? But this one feels like a neutered version of the original. Take that however you want. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. It's Camp Hustle 1. Out.